Greetings and welcome to Song Meanings and Origins. Today we're going to talk about a song I get asked about all of the time. I have answered this question at conventions, at Q&As, on stage. I've even maybe made an old video about it here on the Lair Voltaire. But I get asked about this song so often that I thought it would be a perfect candidate for this video series. It's a song I wrote for a Cartoon Network show called The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and it's a song called Brains. And we're going to start, as we always do, with the meaning of the lyrics. The lyrics of my song Brains are pretty straightforward, I think. It tells the story of an evil meteor creature. And it's discovered by Billy, who is feeling particularly lonely that day, and this creature apparently eats brains. So it asks Billy to go and collect brains from all the townspeople and to bring it to him so that he can eat it. And Billy, as you know, if you watch the show, is not like the sharpest tool in the shed. And so he goes collecting brains. And so the evil meteor says, "Hello there, little boy, don't be shy. Step right up, I'm a reasonable guy. Don't be frightened by the look in my eye. I'm just your average evil meteor from out of the sky. Well, I'm just shy and scared in this place. I'm just a fish out of water from outer space. You can see that the trip has left me tired and drained, so why don't you be a pal and bring me some brains?" So you and I know right away that this brain-eating meteor creature is not a good guy. He is a villain, but Billy doesn't. So Billy then goes out trying to find brains for him. And he goes down to his neighbor's place. See the dull expression on his face. You'd be doing him a favor if you brought him to me. He's not using his brain, he's just watching TV. And that was kind of my little dig at the fact that I'm writing a song for television. I haven't owned a television in over 30 years. So, you know, I'm biting the hand that feeds me, so to speak. I'm being hired to write a song for television, but I'm adding this little sarcastic line that maybe watching television rots your brain. I don't know. In any case, and he tells him go down to Mr. McGee's. He hasn't had a thought since 43. His brain is the portrait of atrophy. He's not using it. Why not give it to me? And that brings us into the chorus. And if you know my music, as you probably do if you're watching this, I love wordplay, I love plays on word, I love puns. So it's very pun heavy, as it often is. And the chorus goes, brains, brains, I won't lie. I'll eat their brains till they're zombified. Sure, they might think it's deranged, but they won't give it a thought after I've eaten their brain. And that's literally, they won't give it a thought if they don't have a brain. And then it goes on, brains, brains, it's okay. It's not a matter if it isn't gray. And some of you may know gray matter is a part of the brain. It is the part of the brain near the spinal cord. So that's a pun. And if at first they think it's strange, they won't think twice if they don't have a brain. Again, it's a pun, but it's literal. They clearly will not think twice. They won't even think once if they don't have a brain. And then from that point on, he continues through the town, you know, looking for places to find people with brains. So I think I just kind of imagined to myself, where would he go? So he goes to the wonton shop. My fortune cookie says that I just can't stop. I suck the noodles right out of their heads, and half an hour later, I'm hungry again. So this song was written almost 20 years ago. So there's a lot of cliches that were prevalent at the time. I don't know if these cliches even exist anymore. Maybe they do. But there was an old saying at the time, you know, people would say oh, I love Chinese food, but half an hour later, I'm still hungry. So that's what that joke is based on. And then he goes down to the donut stop, and you know, there was a popular cliche about police officers hanging out in donut stops. So it says, sneak in tiptoe past the cop, pick me up a cruller and a cup full of tea and any other sweetbreads you happen to see. And if anybody knows what sweetbreads are, they're not breads that are sweet. Sweetbreads are glands. They're organs. They're organ meat. Particularly the thymus gland and the pancreas. It's a gateway drug to eating brains. So it's an organ. It's an edible organ joke, you know, stuck into a song about brains. And then he goes on, and then basically what ends up happening is he tells him, you know, you've been swell to go around and bring me every single brain in town, but with all these brains I can't help but think, that's also a pun, he's got so many brains, he's probably overthinking now, that there isn't one left out there to drink. And basically he tries to get him to bring Mandy, and spoiler alert if you've seen the episode, Mandy's not as dim as Billy, and she ends up getting the better of this evil meteor character. So that is pretty much what the lyrics mean, but what is vastly more interesting about this song is the origin. As I mentioned already, people ask me this all of the time. They say, Voltaire, how did you come to write a song for Cartoon Network? Luck and being in the right place at the right time and meeting the right individual. It was around the year 2000. I was doing a show in Los Angeles at a place called Bar Sinister, where to this day is primarily where I perform when I perform in Los Angeles. And immediately after the show, there was a gentleman who walked up to me. His name was Maxwell Adams. And as I remembered, he was wearing a red zoot suit and like a big bolero hat. And he looked like a zoot suit pachuco. And he came up to me and he said, hey, listen, I really love your music. I'm a big fan of yours. And I'd like you to write a song for my show, my television show. Now, keep in mind, I was fresh to LA. I had an impression, probably from having talked to a lot of people who are like this, that everybody in LA is running around talking about like the movie they're making or the TV show that they're doing, but they haven't signed any contracts. It's not really a reality. I had an impression back then that people in Hollywood were very fake it till you make it, you know, just kind of like pretending things were moving in the hopes that things would start moving. And so I remember thinking to myself like, yeah, this guy probably doesn't really have a show. And I asked him, I said, well, what channel's your show on? He said, Cartoon Network. I said, oh, okay, I've heard of Cartoon Network. And I said, well, I'll check it out, I'll watch it. And he goes, well, it's not on the air yet. And I was like, yeah, it's because it doesn't exist, I'm thinking to myself. And I said, well, what's the name of the show? And he said, it's called Grim and Evil, because that was the original name of the show, Grim and Evil. And I told him, look, I have a song called When You're Evil, you're welcome to use it. You can just use it for free, go ahead and use it. And he said, no, you don't understand. I want you to write a song specifically for my show. So, as I've already mentioned, I was very skeptical because I was in Hollywood. So I said, all right, look, here's my email address. Why don't you email me? If you're serious, just email me and we'll be in touch. He emails me. He asks for my address. And he ends up sending me like the first 4 episodes of the show, which was then called Grim and Evil. And this was so long ago, folks, that they were on VHS tapes. I still have them somewhere, these VHS tapes with the Cartoon Network logo on them. And I thought, oh my God, I'm such an idiot, and this guy's totally legit. I felt like kind of a jerk. So I got back to him and I said, well, I would really love to write a song for your show. What do you want the song to be about? And he said, well, in this episode, the character named Billy is approached by a giant evil meteor creature that wants him to collect brains from the townspeople. And then he tries to get him to bring Mandy, and Mandy gets the better of the brain creature. And I said, okay, so what should the song be about? And he said, whatever you want it to be about, as long as it sort of fits into that storyline. I thought, well, great. Honestly, it's a tremendous amount of freedom to be given, you know, to write a song for a popular cartoon like that. So I started writing all of the verses, and of course they had to go through Cartoon Network. They had to look at it. There was one verse. It's a little behind the scenes information nobody knows about. There was one verse that I wrote, again, like dealing with puns and dealing with cliches and dealing with brains. And 20 years ago, blonde jokes were quite popular, so I thought I'd make a joke about blonde jokes. So there was a verse that went something like, you know, blah, 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 go out there, bring me a brunette, a redhead, I just don't care. Just don't bring me those girls with the long blonde hair, because everyone knows there's nothing in there. And Cartoon Network X'd it. They said, no, you cannot have a verse that says that blondes are dumb. Because there's lots of little blonde girls watching the show who might be like, oh, I'm dumb. And so that verse had to go. And again, keep in mind, you know, I'm writing a song that's supposed to be silly and foolish. But okay, so that verse went. Recently, a friend of mine was like, oh, but the Chinese noodle shop one sticks? Like you eat Chinese people's brains and half an hour later you're hungry again? Huh? I guess, you know, they were different times. Different times. But in any case, I asked him how long, oh, actually, the conversation went like this. I said, how am I being paid for this song? And he said, by the minute. You're being paid by the length of the song. And my next question was, how long can this song be? And he said, 5 minutes, no longer than 5 minutes. And I wrote back to him and wrote, this song will be 5 minutes long. So that's why there's so much vamping in the song. It's like, well, hello, the little boy. Don't be shy. Step right up. I'm a reasonable guy. Don't be frightened by the look in my eye. I'm just your average evil meteor from out of the sky. I really vamped the hell out of it because I wanted the song to be as long as it could be. And I turned it in. And they loved it. Everybody was really happy with it. And then the video came, well, the episode came out, and I didn't realize that the episode was basically my song, like the whole episode. There's maybe 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after. So it was so cool to be in a situation where an entity as amazing and as huge as Cartoon Network basically ends up saying, hey, write a song and we'll make a music video for it. Because that's pretty much what ended up happening. And that is how that song came to be written. Now, I've got some other very, very interesting things to share about this song that are a little scandalous, but I'm gonna save that, I think, for the aftermath. And before we get to aftermath, let's talk a little bit about the production. The song Brains was recorded somewhere between 2000 and 2002 at Planet Gray Studios by George Grant, my longtime recording partner. At that time, Planet Gray Studios was on the Lower East Side of Manhattan on Houston Street, I think just off of Clinton, under like a Chinese restaurant or a Latin American restaurant or something like that. I remember it was in a basement. I remember the floor being AstroTurf. I might have made that, or green carpet or something. It was something that you probably shouldn't have in a basement. And the studio was there very, very briefly. It was, I think, the briefest location for Planet Gray. One of the other things I remember about recording this song is that I don't think I'd ever used a guitar tuner up until that time. So I knew how to tune a guitar to itself. So now I tune my entire guitar down a full step, so the top string, instead of being an E, it's a D. And up until then, whenever I would do a live show, I'd turn to, you know, one of the classical players, like a violin or cellist, and I would say, play me a D, and I would tune to them. But I didn't know tuners existed, so I never had a tuner. And I apparently was the first to record on Brains, hence I'm playing in some weird key that I don't even think I can replicate. You know, my guitar was not tuned down a full step. It was like half a step or like a step and a half, but it's in some wacky, wacky key that I would have never, ever recorded it in. If I recorded it today, I would have used a tuner, I would have made sure my top string was D, and then I would have tuned accordingly. So that's one of the things that stands out about this song. Another thing that stands out about the production of this song was that our drummer at the time was a fellow by the name of Stephen Moses, who was in a punk rock band. I think they were called Alice Donut. I think that's what they were called. And at some point he revealed to me that he played trombone. And I thought, oh, you know what, this song would really, really benefit from like a trombone solo in the middle. So that was played by our drummer. And it was the very first time I'd ever used horns on a song. And I was subsequently really, really in love with that sound, and we ended up doing another song later on called About a Girl, on which that drummer played more trombone. And eventually the song Brains appeared on my album Boo Hoo, which came out in 2002 when I was much thinner and cuter, but I had a black eye. This came out in 2002, and keep in mind, this appeared on my album with permission from Cartoon Network. I had to ask them permission because they own the song, as is the norm. You know, if Disney hires you to write a song, you're not gonna own it, Disney's gonna own it. So they graciously allowed me to put the song on my album, and since then, when it has appeared on other compilations, I've also gone back and asked them for permission, and they've always said yes. So thank you, Cartoon Network, for that. But there was some other things that happened in my dealings with Cartoon Network that were a little less pleasant, and I'm going to tell you about those next in Aftermath. When Maxwell Adams approached me to write a song for a Cartoon Network show, I was on my second album, Almost Human. So you can imagine, I believed at the time that this was my big break. You know, any musician who's starting out in their career, you know, when you're on your first album, your second album, you're kind of wondering when you're going to get that big break, or if you're ever going to get that big break, and this was definitely it. I thought to myself, my song is going to play on Cartoon Network and millions of people are going to hear it. And Cartoon Network had a policy at the time where any show that had songs, they would lift the song from the episode and they'd use it as a music video. And just like on MTV, it would have like the name of the artist, the name of the song, and the name of the show that it came from. So I thought, oh my God, not only is this going to play in the show, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, but all day long they're going to be playing my song as a music video. And trillions of people are going to see my name. They're going to read Brains. They're going to read by Aurelio Voltaire. At the time, it was just Voltaire, by Voltaire. And I'm going to make it big, you know. I'm going to go from doing shows where there's 100 people to doing shows where there's thousands of people. And I really believed that. I thought it was a safe assumption. Well, the song gets delivered and Cartoon Network starts airing the episode. Fabulous. I had a screening party. The very first night that it aired, there was a bar called The Raven. It was a Gothic pub in New York City in the East Village. May it rest in peace. It burned down unfortunately. But the night that it aired, George Grant, who recorded, and a bunch of friends, we gathered there and we watched the song Brains play on television for the very first time on the TV screens. It was a lot of fun. And my name is at the end of the episode somewhere. But then I waited with anticipation for them to cut it into a music video and start playing it all day long. And they did. Except the very first time I saw it on Cartoon Network, it didn't say the name of the song. It didn't say Brains. It said The Evil Meteor Song. And then underneath, it didn't say by Voltaire. It just said From Grim and Evil. And I thought, oh my God, like my biggest opportunity of my music career of all time is really not working out the way it's supposed to work out. So I contacted Cartoon Network. I said, hey, I think there's a little bit of a problem. They said, what is it? I said, well, first of all, whatever intern cut this into a music video, they got the name of the song wrong. The song's called Brains. And I'm not credited at all. So the producer of the show at the time, she said, oh, I see. You know, the producer said, I'll look into it. So, like a couple months go by, producer gets back to me and she's like, yeah, there didn't seem to be any kind of agreement stating that your name had to be in the music video version. And I said, but it's just the right thing to do. I mean, it's like the industry standard. She said, okay, you know what? And then that's when she sent me off to the legal department. She said, I'll send your concerns to them. We'll see if we can get this sorted. So like 2 months later, I finally get a reply from the legal department and they said, we've looked over your contract. By the way, it was about that thick. We looked over your contract and yeah, there's nothing in your contract saying that we are obligated to put your name on the music video. And I was so shocked and I was appalled and hurt because I really, really thought this was going to be like a career changer for me. So I wrote, well, yeah, and then again I reiterated, yeah, but it's like the right thing to do. And they say, let us give that some thought. And so eventually they got back to me like a month later. So it's like a 6-month-long process, you know, doing this whole thing. And meanwhile, my song is playing every single day and millions of people are hearing it, but nobody is finding out who's singing. And one day they finally get back to me and they said, okay, we have finally come to a solution on all of this. And I said, great, what's the solution? They said, well, it's been playing for 6 months, so I think it's run its course. We're going to pull it. So the solution was that they weren't going to air it anymore. So I was devastated. I really felt like my biggest opportunity to have my music heard and for people to find out who I was kind of destroyed. You know, it never really came to be. Now there is a moral to this story, and the moral is that when they sent me that contract that was this thick, I should have gotten a lawyer. I didn't. I made assumptions, you know, like I thought I understand legalese. I've read every contract I've gotten up until now. I mean, this thing was like the size of the Old Testament, it really was. And I read it and I understood it. I really did understand it, you know, and it said things like, Cartoon Network owns the song in perpetuity throughout the known universe and any other universe to be discovered. It is owned by Cartoon Network in every medium and any medium to be invented for eternity. These are actual phrases that were in there. And I understood all of that, you know. But I made assumptions. I made assumptions like that my name would be on the music video. And when you're doing these kinds of deals, you can't make assumptions. So the moral of the story is, if you're a musician and you're going to read your own contracts, you better be better at it than I was, and don't make assumptions, or just get a lawyer. I do want to share a quick story with you about the contract, and that was that after I read it. So my publishing company is called Mars Needs Music, and as I was reading the contract and it said that Cartoon Network owned the song throughout the known universe, etc., etc., I thought, like, it'd be really cool if I owned the rights to this song on the planet Mars. So I think the only change that I asked for in this enormous contract was, I would like to own the rights to the song on the planet Mars. And they just wrote back like a one-word reply, just said no. Like, no, you can't own the rights to the song Brains on the planet Mars. I think I lost out. I think I could have made a lot of money on that in 200 years. But anyway, the moral of the story is that I should have gotten a lawyer, and I should not have made the assumption that they were going to do what I just thought was the industry standard. But then, a year or two later, Maxwell Atoms, who I had kept in touch with, hired me again to write another song for Cartoon Network for the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy film, Big Boogie Adventure, and that song is called Land of the Dead. That was not cut into a music video, unfortunately, so that was not an issue. So I want to tell you what I learned from this experience, and that was that in life, sometimes things happen. And your ego tells you, this is what I want, this is what's going to make me happy, fulfilled, this is going to lead to great things. You know, you set your sights on certain goals, and those goals are not attained. And you're disappointed. And 10 years later, 15 years later, the majority of shows that I play, a handful of people will inevitably walk up to me and say, I first found out about you on the Cartoon Network show, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. I was 8 years old, I watched the show, I really liked that song Brains. Years later, I stumbled into your music and I found out it was you. And when I was finally old enough to go to a concert, here I am at your concert. And it's a little hard of a pill to swallow, especially for young people, to be told that the things that you want right now may not happen right now. But to me, it is such a beautiful story that what took place with me and Maxwell Atoms and Cartoon Network 18 years ago, what it did was it planted a seed. And today, when I play concerts, a great number of the people who are there were people who found out about me because of this song, and because of Maxwell Atoms, and because of Cartoon Network. So sometimes instant gratification doesn't happen, and you can't feel like it's the end of the world, because it might be planting a seed for something really truly amazing and vastly more valuable many, many years down the line. But the coolest thing that came from my entire experience writing this song for Cartoon Network was that to this day, 18 years later, Maxwell Atoms and I are still really good friends. When I play in LA, he very often comes out to the shows. I play Brains and I point at him and embarrass him. And last December, when I was in Thailand for a month, he just happened to be there by chance, and we met up and we hung out and had a really great time. So ultimately, one of the greatest things that came from this entire experience was a friendship. So, Maxwell Atoms, if you're watching, thank you so very, very much for the opportunity to write Brains for your amazing show, and also to write Land of the Dead for your amazing show. And you guys watching, thank you for listening to my songs. I hope you have enjoyed this behind-the-scenes stroll through one of my most popular songs. If there's a song that you want to hear me talk about here on Song Meanings and Origins, leave it in the comments below. I will eventually get to all of them. That is my plan. I hope I stick with it. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what song you'd like to hear about next. Until then, don't let anyone eat your brains! If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe so that you'll never miss another video on the Lair of Voltaire.